This was the scene that started a massive GoFundMe campaign and changed 3 lives forever, though in entirely unexpected ways. It was November 15th, 2017 at around 9:20 p.m. Caitlin McClure and her boyfriend Mark D'Amico sat in their car and showed homeless veteran Johnny Bobbitt what they'd done for him. "This changes my life," were the words he kept repeating in the video, a look of pure shock and happiness on his face. This was then shared to YouTube and immediately it went viral. Within the description box, it linked back to a GoFundMe page titled "Paying It Forward," created by the Good Samaritan couple of McClure and D'Amico. Within this GoFundMe, they described Bobbitt as a man who represented the best humanity had to offer. He performed an act so selfless that it was impossible to ignore. On November 10th, 2017, as it was getting dark, McClure found herself heading into Philadelphia and running out of gas near a bridge. She was going to get out of her car and walk to a gas station in a dangerous neighborhood, but Bobbitt came to her rescue. "Get back inside your car, lock the doors, and I'll be back soon," he said, before heading off on his way. Before long, he returned with a gas can, filling her tank and sending her safely back home, an act that he described as just something he did, not expecting anything in return. McClure then told her boyfriend, and immediately the pair returned to find Bobbitt, snapping this infamous picture that accompanied the GoFundMe campaign. The campaign described how Bobbitt used his last $20, money he'd panhandled and that would fill his belly on the cold streets, just to save her from a dangerous situation. People immediately took notice and donations started to flood in. The issue is, of course, is that this story is a lie. Not all of it, just enough for it to matter. In fact, the little lie was not the worst thing about the story and could be totally forgiven if it ended right there. But when it comes to greed, it never ends there. It all started with the devil in the details, so let's separate the facts from the fiction. Johnny Bobbitt was a homeless veteran. He travelled to Philadelphia to find work and ended up instead finding a drug addiction. One night on the streets led to 2, which led to a week, and soon enough he had been there for a year. No money, no hope, just a crippling addiction that occupied his entire waking life. That is the biggest fact of this story. After that, it's pretty much all lies. McClure never ran out of gas. Instead, she and her boyfriend D'Amico were having money problems and decided to fix those problems in an unconventional way. By lying to the public, pulling on the heartstrings, and soliciting some charity, not for themselves, at least not publicly, but for somebody who really needed it. Would they be able to raise that money with a normal everyday story that was true? Probably not. So instead, they created a fiction that would captivate the public. They created the gas story. So the timeline goes like this. McClure and D'Amico create the GoFundMe on November 10th, 2017. And within 1 hour of it going live, the fraud is discussed, at least behind closed doors. Within that hour, a friend of McClure texted her and questioned the story, to which she confirmed it's fake. The gas part is completely made up, but the guy isn't. I had to make something up to make people feel bad, so shush about the made up part. This friend is the first person outside of McClure and D'Amico to know that they just committed what the law refers to as wire fraud, a federal crime punishable by up to 30 years in prison. But realistically, this was what some might call a white lie, a story made up to raise money for someone who really did need it, though he wasn't the saint that it made him out to be. Maybe this could be forgiven in pursuit of the greater good. The plan, however, began sometime prior to that day, and the homeless Bobbitt was purely a vehicle for what later became an act of evil, and without his initial involvement or knowledge. You see, according to text messages recovered at a later date, just under a month prior to the creation of the GoFundMe, D'Amico and McClure were texting each other about Bobbitt. The text discussed helping out that homeless guy buy Sugar House, and how they'd previously given him $10. Which does sound like they started with good intentions. But when the GoFundMe was created on November 10th, with that little lie, Bobbitt never knew. He just had his picture snapped with 2 people who gave him a few dollars and went on with his day. It wasn't until November 15th at 1 PM when McClure was told by her friend that the story could really backfire if people found the homeless guy and asked him about what had happened. After all, he would just tell the truth, that the story was fake and that he didn't know anything about GoFundMe, and then the saga would end right there. Instead, within 8 hours' time, McClure and D'Amico had travelled to that corner where Bobbitt lived, explained the situation to him, and recorded a staged video where he reads the GoFundMe page and reacts to the generosity of strangers. I say staged because obviously he knew this was a lie, but the reaction was probably genuine because this was life-changing for him.
That changes my life right there.
$1,764.
That changes my life. The $769 changes my life.
And to make things clear, Bobbitt was now involved in the fraud. He was to be the recipient of money gained from a lie that, while he had no real hand in starting, was now helping to perpetuate for personal gain.
Oh, that's amazing.
Oh. And that's if it stops.
I'm not gonna sleep.
And that's if it stops. That's if it stops right now. I think that it's going to keep going.
At this stage, the agreement made between the trio was made face to face, and therefore the specifics become unknown. He said, she said. However, we have some fairly interesting circumstantial evidence to suggest that the couple planned to scam the homeless man all along and only included him when they thought things might get out of hand. Take, for example, the GoFundMe amount asked during the creation, $10,000. Why? Why that number? During the later investigation, it was discovered that the pair owed precisely $9,800 to family members for personal family loans. A pretty interesting coincidence to go along with them not telling Bobbitt about the scheme until over $1,500 had already been raised. After they told him and they staged the reaction that went to YouTube, the story took on a life of itself and it could no longer be contained. The chance to walk this back had vanished. They were now stuck telling the same lie over and over and over again on bigger and bigger platforms for a growing audience of people who found it inspiring and uplifting. The crowdfunding goal of $10,000 was blown away, and within days, it was climbing towards the $100,000 figure. It was at this time that things started to collapse all around them. By November 21st, 2017, so just 11 days after the GoFundMe started, but 6 days after the recording with Bobbitt had gone viral, the GoFundMe had already raised $280,000, an absolutely life-changing sum of money for anybody, but especially so for a man who literally had nothing. Many donators, as well as media outlets, had questions for the custodians who had organised this entire campaign. One particular update was posted to the GoFundMe page that on surface level seems innocent, but in reality it was the beginning of a gust of wind blowing at the house of cards they now sat atop. November 27th, McClure wrote the following. We've received a lot of comments and questions about what his plans are for the money and how it will be used. Hopefully this will answer them while keeping his privacy and the privacy of the people he is helping also. The first thing on the list is a new home, which he will own. He will never have to worry about a roof over his head again. Second will be the dream truck he's always wanted, a 1999 Ford Ranger. Yes, I'm serious. There will also be 2 trusts set up in his name. This sounds amazing, and of course the public were ecstatic about their impact on this unknown homeless veteran's life. But nobody could be happier than Bobbitt himself, who also read this update and expected that any day now he would be whisked away to a brand new life, something out of a fairy tale. But that isn't what happened at all. Instead, he found himself first in a hotel room for a few weeks, and then later living in an RV trailer on McClure's land. Yes, while technically not lying, this seemed a little fishy already. I mean, McClure didn't say they would buy an actual house, she just said a home and a roof over his head, but she did say he would own it, which he didn't. It was in her name. It was an $18,000 RV, which was a home and it did have a roof. But you'd have to question, why that and not a house? It also didn't end there. The 1999 Ford Ranger also never materialized. Instead, Bobbitt was given a used SUV that broke down within a few weeks of use. He was also then given a bank account in his own name with $25,000 inside. But the total of these things were a fraction of what was raised. Still, it was more than he had before, so he didn't really ask too many questions. Instead, He spent the next 6 or so months living in the RV on McClure's land, watching as D'Amico and McClure went on more and more vacations, to California, to Las Vegas, to Florida Disney World, and of course repeated trips to New York. Then he watched as the Louis Vuitton bags started to enter the house, and then as a new $25,000 BMW arrived on the driveway. This is when he started to ask questions. If this was a reasonable story, I could now say that they explained to him the things that they were buying were with their own money and everything was okay. After all, they were looking to sign a book deal and a movie deal, telling his story and pulling in potentially millions of dollars off the back of what had happened. That might be a reasonable explanation. Instead, they sold his broken truck, they sold his temporary home on wheels, both of which they'd bought and registered in McClure's name, and they kicked him off their land, making him, yet again, homeless. At this stage in the story, Bobbitt was worse off than when he started, but he was still thankful to the pair who had helped him, and they were all in this situation together, so he still kept quiet. That was until journalists discovered him panhandling on the streets in his old location and started to ask some pretty important questions, such as, why are you here, and where is that $400,000 that the public gave you? Shortly after, homeless advocates got Bobbitt into a detox centre and in touch with pro bono lawyers who heard his story and knew immediately that this was a case that they were interested in. By August 28th of 2018, legal documents were filed, and within 2 days, a judge had called an emergency hearing. The couple presented in court and were ordered to turn over all funds held in their possession to a trust held by Bobbitt's current attorneys, an order that must be completed within 24 hours. An important detail here is that literally 1 day before the legal filing, 3 days before the judge had made this decision, D'Amico and McClure had participated in a live interview on the Megyn Kelly Today Show where they said there was $150,000 sitting in their account untouched, just waiting for Bobbitt to turn his life around and stop spending what they gave him on substances. They said, and this is a quote, that they had not spent $1 of the GoFundMe money.
Have you spent $1 of that $400,000 on yourselves?
No.
Nothing.
No.
You're representing that right here and right now. There's never going to be any proof that you did.
No.
So with that, making a bank transfer at the order of a judge within 24 hours should have been a fairly easy task. Case closed, everyone moves on with their separate lives, it's all good. But if that was the story, you wouldn't be listening to this video. Instead, a few days later on the 4th of September, the couple's attorney stood up in front of the judge and said the following: "There is no money, it is gone. The GoFundMe campaign money has left my client's accounts." A concept that sounds crazy, right? The money left their accounts? It sounds as if it moved on its own free will, that it simply got up one day and vacated the bank. But that didn't happen, so what really did? Well, the judge decided that the best course of action here would be to turn the case over to the Burlington County Prosecutor's Office Financial Crimes Unit. If the civil lawsuit being filed didn't do it, this would be the moment where the dynamic duo collectively felt their stomach drop out of their ass, especially since it wasn't long before the FBI got involved and took over the investigation. This was the end. All that was left was the evidence, the timeline, and of course, the consequences. During an interview, Bobbitt, who knew this couple better than the judges, better than the lawyers, better than the public, and better than the federal investigators, said the following: "I think it's pretty hypocritical for you to tell me I can't manage my money because I might spend it on drugs, and you are doing the same thing." The pair was on the hook for a massive fraud. The sharks were circling. And you know what they did? Well, I'll tell you what they didn't do, and that is stay together as a loving couple and face the music together. Instead, they broke up, and McClure's lawyers said the following: "I'm confident that in the end, the evidence will reveal that Kate had only the best intentions. She was used by Mr. D'Amico and Mr. Bobbitt, and she thought throughout this that the money was going to a homeless veteran. She was unaware that they had concocted this scheme. It wasn't until September, when meeting with prosecutors, that she came to realize she had been used by both of them." So let's examine how she was used by both of them, as well as what Bobbitt was talking about when he said they were hypocritical. McClure's lawyer said she didn't know the money wasn't being given to Bobbitt until September of 2018. But let me read you what she had to say to her friend on March 11th, 2018 at 3:56 AM. "Right, yeah, that's true. Fuck him though. To which her friend replies, "You really need to get rid of him and get the money off your back by donating." To which McClure replied, "I'll be keeping the rest of the money, fuck you very much." I don't think I need to show you any more examples to illustrate this point, so let's move on to what the investigation found. After searching the home and vehicles of D'Amico and McClure, as well as interviewing friends and family, going through phone records, and reading over 60,000 text messages between the couple, the picture became clear. It was so easy to paint that it could have been made with finger paints. D'Amico earned $15,000 or less each year, and McClure earned between $37,000 and $43,000 each year. The pair exchanged texts back and forth complaining about their financial woes, inability to pay bills, debts, and of course their gambling problems at the local casinos. They were broke, and they didn't earn enough money to buy luxury goods, travel the country as they'd been doing since the GoFundMe succeeded, and definitely not enough to keep going to the casino. Clearly, this was being funded by stealing the money meant for Bobbitt's new life. In the days after the $10,000 Kickstarter was created and surpassed, they paid off debts to family members totaling $9,800 immediately and began giving small chunks of money as well as accommodation to Bobbitt, as was expected of them. But between November 21st and December 12th, $367,000 was transferred to accounts that the couple controlled. The rest, of course, was taken by GoFundMe for fees, if you're wondering where the disparity of the money raised comes from. Over the next few months, they spent all of that money. And when I say few months, I mean by March 9th, 2018, just 3 months later, they had less than $10,000 remaining. This was confirmed via text sent between the pair, quote, "I can't believe we have less than 10k left. I'm so upset now." So let's break down how that money was spent. Casino gamblings, $21,054. Travel expenses, $20,747 for a single vacation to Vegas. Cryptocurrency purchases of $12,752. And a car/trailer purchase totaling $42,782. So, where's the rest? Well, $188,000 was withdrawn in cash, $85,000 of which was located in Philadelphia, Bensalem, Atlantic City, and Las Vegas. Essentially, what happened was they told Bobbitt and later the public that they couldn't trust him with the money they were given that was supposed to pass through them as the vessel and go straight to Bobbitt to change his life. That if they handed him the money, his addiction would make him waste it. But instead, they used their own addiction and gambled and splashed the money away that the three of them raised with a fraudulent scheme. In the end, the three of them went to federal court. Caitlin McClure pled guilty and was sentenced to 3 years in a New Jersey prison, as well as barred from holding any public job in the future, as she had been working for the Department of Transportation prior to these events. As for Mark D'Amico, well, let's see how well this one aged. On September 2nd, 2018, at approximately 1:03 p.m, McClure recorded a conversation between herself and D'Amico, essentially discussing the GoFundMe campaign. McClure stated that she felt as if she was going to take the fall and be blamed because her name was on everything. She expressed this concern about going to jail, to which D'Amico replied, "You don't go to jail for lying on TV."
D'Amico, formerly of Bordentown, has now been indicted on federal wire fraud and money laundering charges.
Well, he did, for 5 years, so that didn't age very well. As for Johnny Bobbitt, well, he worked with the prosecutors as well as pleading guilty to a lesser charge, and was ordered to pay back $25,000 as well as a 3-year probation. So this entire situation, yet again, illustrates the power of a feel-good story and what that can be used for in the hands of people who lack the moral character to do what is right. Realistically, the gambling-addicted duo could have paid off their debts and helped a man turn around his life at no cost to themselves, while even profiting, without anyone finding out what happened, even with what they called their little lie, or what the FBI called fraud. But, either through malevolence or sheer greed, not even $100,000 was enough for them to quit while they were ahead. Instead, they ruined their lives and further eroded the trust in crowdfunding for good causes. They are a prime example of why you cannot trust what you see on the internet, even if it's true. The truth can be warped or used for nefarious purposes. This is just another of those stories.